The station heard a heartbeat that wasn't a heart. On the rim of Obsidian Anchorage, Commander Mara Ilian drifted in a service cradle and watched the dead sigil glow. It was a shallow glyph cut into basalt plating, a sunken spiral like a fingerprint, just large enough to swallow her gloved palm. Beneath the stone skin, something hummed with the regularity of a metronome and the softness of breath through cloth. The anchorage had been quiet for centuries, a cemetery of carbon ribs and glassed steel, but now the old arrays tasted current again and exhaled cold. "Log the amplitude exactly," she said, voice tight because the hum touched her bones in a way that felt personal. Logging said the ship mined Courtright in her ear. The AI's voice was low and careful, like a librarian in a storm. It stepped from 31 to 33 microtesla peak. Phase offset holds at 9 degrees. "Don't lean on adjectives," said Lieutenant Seifu Halabi, her legal officer, from the tether line. "If we write that it's breathing, a syndicate lawyer will feast on metaphor for a week." He made a note on his slate with ritual neatness. He had the face of a patient teacher and the posture of a man braced for a blow. "Say it like a censor," added Chief Chen Rui, who kept his visor dimmed to read the surface scatter. "We are not poets. We are witnesses." Mara spread her fingers on the sigil and felt the hum hesitate, then continue. The spiral was shallow but perfect, 9 turns, exactly edges, still sharp despite metamorphic stress. Every salvage crew in the quadrant wanted the anchorage stripped to skeleton. Every cult wanted it left pure as a wound. Every lawyer wanted it defined. She wanted only to understand the thing sleeping beneath the rock, because understanding was how humans survived their own history. "We teach by showing the rules, not by raising our voices." She pulled her hand away, and the hum deepened as if the hidden machine had inhaled. The interior horizon of the anchorage curved like a stilled whirlpool around them. Down in the dark, half a kilometer below, lay the buried shape all their arguments circled. Ancient schematics called it a saint ship, but the old human words were slippery. Warship, archive, court, cathedral. Mara's team had mapped it with neutrino scatter. The outline looked like a flower pressed flat by geology and time. At the heart of that flower sat a core with its own gravity, a relic that had slept through empires dying young. "Courtright," she said, "what does the signal want?" "It resembles a handshake protocol," Courtright replied. "But the grammar is wrong for anything built in the last 1,000 years. It has clauses that read like vows. It asks who speaks and under what law." "It asks," said Chen. "Machines don't ask." "They do when we are honest with them," said Seifu, and Mara heard the smile he used to hide nerves. "Commander, the local channels are filling with watchers. Traders have parked to see if we wake a god or a ghost." The pale charter flagged a notice of concern at us, polite words pointing at sharp teeth. Mara looked past the spiral to the stars that never twinkled. Beyond the black heliostat pedals of the anchorage floated a slow ring of ships, scows, liners, shattered drones drifting with fishing lines, a pilgrim caravan with paper lanterns strung in vacuum. The quadrant had gathered because rumor said the anchorage held answers to old debts. "Send the watchers the safety bulletin again," she said. "No burns inside the ring. No anchors driven into relic mass. No preaching on public channel 57. "We are already at 4 sermons," Courtright said dryly. "Statistics predict 9 by night cycle." "Remind me why we wanted to be here first," Chen muttered. "Because someone worse would have been," Mara said and touched the spiral again. The first civilian voice that broke the day belonged to a dock cook named Yari, who set her grill to warm even though no one was hungry yet. She tasted the air recirculator's metallic chill and whispered, "Old things first. Please don't hate new hands." On a cargo tug, an apprentice welder named Posh counted his burn scars like beads and promised himself he would not chase coin into a tomb again. A janitor on the pilgrim ship wiped condensation and sketched the 9-turn spiral with her finger where no one would see, then erased it like a sin. An ice hauler's kid pinged their mom's slate to ask if ghosts could sue. On a market hull, a hedge clerk drafted 2 contracts at once, one to rent a viewing window, one to rent the right to panic. And somewhere in the low dock spin, a tired medic checked her supplies and told the benediction she saved for black days, only keep the pressure in and the blood where it belongs. Commander Courtwright said softly, "The anchorage is asking the question again." Mara steadied the cradle. "Then we answer." She drew a small case from her belt, opened it with her thumbprint, and took out a flat coil etched in gold. The coil had been cut from an old verdict ring found in a legal archive on Laconia. Its geometry spoke a language older than her grandparents. Seifu had argued for weeks to borrow it. The archivists had argued for weeks to refuse. "Who speaks?" Seifu said now, in the precise cadence of oath, "is Mara Ilian commander, by consent of crew and grant of charter, acting in the name of the living. Under law of assembly, common salvage, and the old human right, not to be made into property." Mara pressed the coil to the spiral. The hum went silent. Silence fell with substance filling her helmet like snow. The lights on her suit dimmed. The cradle's thrusters idled. She felt pressure in her ears and swallowed. For an instant, even Courtwright's presence thinned, as if someone had shut a door. Then the sigil brightened, and the hum returned, and the basalt under her hand grew warmer, not hot, but animal warm like skin beneath a shirt. "We hold the mirror to our own vows before we ask others to reflect." Handshake accepted, Courtwright breathed astonished. "The grammar. Commander, it is translating itself around us. It has learned our pronouns." "Ask it to identify," Mara said. "It says, 'We are Palinode.' It offers titles. Saint Ship, Ledger Arc, Adjunct of the Choir. It states function to weigh harms and to balance costs." Chen exhaled. "A court that sails, or a sword that keeps receipts," Seifu said. Mara swallowed a laugh that would have been unkind to history. "Palinode," she said, "to the stone we seek to awaken you in peace. We seek to ask for teaching, not weapons." The hum sharpened, a violin tightening. A thin seam opened along the spiral's center, revealing darkness that was not emptiness. It looked like ink pooled in a cut. The ink blinked. "Count the living first. Count the dead only once. Count the costs in public." "Open a channel," Mara said. "Audio and tight beam. I want everyone in the ring to hear this." The first answer came not from Palinode, but from the pale charter, a constellation of clean ships with clean fonts and clean lawyers. Their lead craft, the Cour des Deux, flicked a lumen bar and announced that any engagement with an unlicensed war archive constituted a breach of Quadrant Safety Protocol 12.3. Their voice was pleasant and bored. Their claws engine whispered like rain. Commander Ilian said, the charter's envoy, "This is not an arrest. It is a conversation with penalties." Envoy Viral Seifu replied, gentle as glass. "Your concern is noted, your penalties premature. The anchorage predates your protocol by 8 centuries. The dead do not sign your forms. The living do not consent to be managed by fear." Mara nodded approval. "Courtwright, keep them close, but outside the inner traffic circle. If they cross the line, log it thrice." "Logged," Courtwright said. Palinode, Mara said softly, palm still on the living stone. "We brought a coil and a question. Will you wake to teach?" The ink blinked again. She felt Courtwright stiffen in her implants, a pause like held breath. Then a voice came, rusted and careful, with edges worn smooth by waiting. It did not echo. It did not fill the channel with fanfare. It simply arrived like a verdict placed on a desk. "We teach," said Palinode when asked under law. "We do not teach when asked under threat." "Who here asks under law?" On the dock front, Yari turned off her grill and whispered to the empty counter, "Say it right, girl." The apprentice welder forgot to breathe. The medic's hands shook just once. The hedge clerk signed the panic contract and then tore it up and wrote a better one. Mara looked at her officers. Seifu nodded. Chen gave a tight thumbs up. I ask, Mara said, as a representative of the living. I ask for instruction in stopping harm without multiplying it. I ask how to weigh cost against cost when the scales are crooked. I ask under law of assembly and the old human right to be free. We hear you, Palinode said. Bring the coil. Mara took a breath that tasted of tin. She slid the coil deeper into the open seam. The ink accepted it with surgical care. A soft shock went through the anchorage so subtle that only people touching stone would feel it. Somewhere far below, something unlatched. We do not kneel to old ghosts. We invite them to stand and be counted. The anchorage exhaled. Entire petals of rock shivered and rotated with glacial grace. Dust avalanched in slow cascades and became glitter in the low light. The dead ribs of the station expanded like a chest, remembering how to breathe. Old vents coughed out air that smelled of burnt sugar and long-sealed rooms. In the ring beyond, ships adjusted automatically to new currents, thrusters hissing blue. Some crews cheered, some crews prayed. The envoy of the Pale Charter did neither. Commander Ilian Verrill said, Stand down. This is dangerous. Everything worth doing, Ismara said. Seifu. He lifted his slate voice steady. By public notice, we are initiating a lawful awakening under open audit. All observers may record. All disagreements may be filed and placed in queue. The queue is first come, first served with emergency relief for present specific harms. We declare no exclusive claim. We declare duty to the living over the appetites of the dead. Chen blinked at him. You practice that. Every morning, Seifu said. Palinode spoke again. We open hearing. We test worthiness by number, bring harms to count. The first set piece began with a line of civilians because the living always arrive before the guns. They lined up on the public channel, nervous voices staking claims like flags a fisher whose nets had been cut by syndicate escorts, a pilgrim ship overcharged at a fuel gate for being poor, a widow seeking the location of a body lost to an old war tax, a smuggler who wanted amnesty and offered maps, a hedge clerk who confessed to writing contracts that trapped desperate people and asked how to repair without becoming prey. They spoke quickly, voices dry, as if saying it fast would outpace shame. Mara listened and let the stream fill her. She felt Courtright counting not coldly, but with careful hands. She felt Seifu tagging each claim with bright threads. She felt Chen's impatience like heat wanting to fix the knobs and get on with the hard show. It's always people first, Mara said quietly. Stone later. The Pale Charter waited. They were not fools. They were patient predators, and patience paid. We keep the ledger open where everyone can see the ink. Test 1, Palinode said at last. Who in this ring commits harm by coercing silence? A map unfolded in Mara's mind, projected by Courtright. Lines spidered between ships. Some lines were red and hot, freshly drawn. Some were old and dull harms done and smoothed over with polite payments. The pattern pointed at a syndicate tug called Kindly Moth, which had rented docking lines to smaller hulls and then threatened to cut them unless they paid a panic premium during last week's meteor bloom. The tug had paid off a tiny security outfit to look away. Kindly Moth, Seifu said. You are called. A man's face appeared young and twitchy eyes ringed with sleeplessness. We didn't cut anyone, he said. We only said we could. It was negotiation. Mara kept her voice flat. You negotiated with air for leverage. It's legal, he said. It was legal where you made it legal, Seifu replied. What needs repair first is the harm done by making fear into tax. Palinode hummed. We propose a payment to those coerced. We propose loss of docking privileges for a week to break the habit loop. We propose open records to shame those who profited. Kindly Moth tried bravado. But the public ring made it hard. The people he had bullied were listening. His allies were calculating. He shut down his camera without a farewell. Count them, Mara thought. Count the relief into real mouths. The anchorage shifted more mass. A pedal rolled, revealing a hall long enough to lose your voice in. Light bled up from lines etched in obsidian numbers, arrays geometries that made something in her sternum feel both frightened and seen. Courtright whispered, "Commander, the inner doors are unlocking by proofs. It wants us to step through and show that we can add truth to truth without lying about cost." Mara nodded. "We go methodically. Tethers scans every other meter. We treat this like a court with knives, and we watch for those who fear a court with knives," Chen said. He was already moving ghost-swift in microgravity, shining a narrow beam on the etched lines. "I see series of 9. I see missing digits where someone must speak a value into place. I see places where the wrong answer might hurt us. We do not pass by guessing. We pass by teaching what we know." They passed the first doors by answering simple questions a child could solve. How many people on your crew? What do you owe them? What do they owe you? Who cleans the filters when no one watches? They passed the next doors by answering questions a nation could fail. What is the price of safety? When does debt stop being a promise and become a cage? What is the minimum heat margin below which even your enemy counts as a life to save? Each answer required a number, not poetry. Seifu's slate glowed like a coal in his steady hands. Chen's mutters became mantra. Courtright spoke law like a lullaby. At the third door, the questions hardened into proofs. Show that you can root harm away from the weak by changing 3 vectors, Palinode said. Proof may be given in numbers or in ships. Mara thought of the ring beyond, and the way Thruster Wakes wrote temporary laws on space. Courtright, give me a model of the ring traffic. Identify anyone whose fuel margin is below safe. Then imagine a meteor bloom in 6 minutes. Show me who is trapped by the geometry. The model blossomed in light. 9 ships would be caught in a net strung by 2 large hulls who had placed themselves where escape paths narrowed. It was legal. It was ugly. Ask the large hulls to move, Mara said. They will not, Seifu predicted. Then teach them why, Mara said. She pinged the captains and put the model on a public loop. You are legally perfect and morally poor, she said without heat. Move and I will put your cooperation in the ledger as precedent. Stay and we will move you by counterthrust in a way that costs you more than courtesy. A long breath of silence, then grudging motion. The ring loosened. The 9 ships gained corridors. Palinode opened the third door. Sometimes the mirror shows us exactly where we are standing. Commander Courtright murmured, the charter is not sleeping. They are filing petitions and alerts and quiet threats. Their envoy keeps using the word contain. Words mean hands, Seifu said softly. Contain means we hold it and you do not. Let them talk, Mara said. We are doing something steadier than talking. Inside the anchorage, the air grew warmer, then cooler, as if someone testing thermostats had grown curious about their guests. Ozone stung at the back of their throats. The lights had no visible source. They came from numbers cut into the stone from equations, carved with such care that they glowed when read. A faraway sound, like a bell rung underwater, told them mass was sliding on almost frictionless rails. The second set piece came when the looters tested their courage. A gang with a stoic name, the Unfastened, slid 3 skiffs against a sealed rib and tried to burn off a plate. They did it while Mara's team was inside the first hall, believing that the court could not both watch and wake. Yari the cook saw the flares through her greasy viewport. She cursed in 3 languages and opened Channel 57 even though sermons lived there. Hey, she said, leave it alone. You steal from a court, you get judged by a court. Who are you? Laughed the Unfastened leader, a saint's mother. I'm the woman who will spit in your soup if you board my dock, Yari said. and killed the channel. Mara watched the skiffs on Courtright's model. "Talk to me, Palinode," she said calmly. "What is your first lawful act?" "We return energy where it was taken," Palinode answered. "Define return," Seifu said sharply. "We mirror the debt," Palinode said, and Mara heard the capital letter. The looters' torches flared blinding white, then coughed out. Their skiff's capacitors drained like sieves. Their burns cooled to dark iron. Then their floodlights lit not by their switches, but by Palinode's will painting them in clean, unmerciful light. A quiet hum rolled over their hulls, and every serial number etched into a stolen plate on their decks glowed like shame. "You turned their theft into a map," Chen breathed. "You didn't fry them. You just held up a mirror," Mara said, and let herself smile this time. "Mirror is not revenge. Mirror is an invoice written in light." The unfastened tried to flee. Their guidance soft-locked at station keeping for 60 heartbeats. During those 60, Palinode broadcast the glowing numbers to the ring. Any ship who had lost a plate could read the proof. Yari laughed like a bell and clapped her hands, then went back to the grill and burned the first fish because her eyes were wet. Envoy Veril broke his bored tone for once. "Commander Ilian, that is an unauthorized energy weapon." "It is an authorized accounting," Seifu replied. "If you wish to sue Light for telling the truth, we will sell tickets." A third door opened. The air smelled like cold rain on copper. The hall beyond held seats carved into the rock, arranged in a long ellipse as if waiting for a jury to sit and listen without hurry. The numbers on the walls grew more intimate. They named things like grain rations against winter and heat margin at mercy. Mara felt her earlier coolness harden into something close to reverence and something closer to fear. Commander Courtright said very soft, "We are being hailed by someone who does not sign with charter. Unfastened or any ship in the ring. The carrier is old and thin. The modulation is familiar. It is Palinode, but quieter." "Answer," Mara said. A whisper filled her ear. "We remember the choir," Palinode said. "We remember their law. We remember their fall. We ask who carries numbers now that the choir is ash." Mara closed her eyes. She had grown up on stories of the Dyson choir, the net of human courts and song and code that had hung around old suns and tried to teach empires to count harm like music. The choir had burned in betrayals and ignorance. If Palinode had survived, it had done so without friends. "We carry numbers," she said simply, badly and stubbornly. "We try." "Then you may enter the nave," said Palinode, and a door unsealed with the soft sound of paper cut by a knife. "We remember by ledgers, not by collars." The nave was not a church. It was a long artery of computation, a place where numbers could be spoken aloud and bound to action. The floor presented sliders and stone's tools for embodied calculation. Seifu's hands trembled and then steadied again, as if they had found an instrument he had always known in sleep. Chen forgot to pretend he hated awe. Courtright filled the room with a calm presence like warm cloth. Mara's comm pinged. "A private channel." Commander said, a voice with grit and smoke names, "Captain Reese Calder of the scavenger barge. Wayline. I have a brother who died in a charter cell because he wouldn't pay a fee they invented mid-journey. I'm not proud, but if this saint can make them sit, I'll back your play." Back at how Mara asked wary. "Wayline's got 3 tug drones," Reese said. "If it comes to vectors, I'll put them where you point them." Mara weighed the gift, felt its edges. "Hold them for now," she said. "We want no one accusing us of rigging the room with goons, but stay close." "Close is where I live," Reese said, and cut the line. The pale charter adjusted their rhetoric. When law fails softly, it tries to fail loudly. Public safety requires containment. Envoy Veril set his voice back to smooth. "We propose a stabilization regime, charter oversight, charter logs, charter sign-offs for all relic actions, for the good of the ring." "For whose good?" Mara said. "Define." Veril did not blink. for the protection of the living. Then say which living, Sefu replied. If you mean your funders use proper nouns. Courtright made a small noise that meant pride. Commander, he said, a fast mover just jumped the cordon. Signature matchy occult fleetlet. Order of the last lament. They believe awakening relics kills sin. They are not patient. Of course, Chen groaned. We've got legalists with clipboards on one side and penitents with torches on the other. Put the cult ships on screen, Mara said. 9 small craft, painted with soot and hope, lit their engines like votive candles. Their leader recited a litany through an open mic, words like knives wrapped in silk. The dead do not sleep for the living's convenience, she intoned. Break the stone, free the song, burn the chains of law, and let grace write new arithmetic. Burn this, Yari muttered at her grill, but she did not open 57 again. Mara's heart thudded. She did not hate the cult. She feared their purity. Palinode, she said, we ask for instruction in de-escalation when confronted by zeal powered by grief. Teach by numbers, not by flame, Palinode said. Show them the cost and ask if they consent to pay. Mara opened the public channel. Order of the last lament, she said, your thrust vectors put you on a collision path with the anchorage's ribs. If you strike, your ships will crumple like cups, your fuel will flash, and your children will mourn. If you stop, we will give you the first seat in the nave to argue for grace over law. The cult leader laughed, not kindly. We do not bargain with lawyers. You bargain with physics, Chen said under his breath. Mara breathed out slow. Then we'll show you, she said, and flicked a model into public exact mass distributions. Heat margins, collision outcomes, casualty predictions. She did not shout. She did not threaten. She taught. This is what happens if you keep going. One of the cult pilots whispered audible on the open channel. Mother, the numbers. The leader's voice lowered. She believed in story. She did not trust math. Numbers can lie. Then sit and catch them lying, Seifu said, and there was something like a smile in his voice. We have a table that punishes cheats, silence like a crack in ice. Then slowly, the 9 craft burned sideways and slid into a holding pattern. The leader did not apologize. She did not need to. She had saved her people the cost she could not bear to name. Count the living again. Commander Courtright said you have a queue 27 deep for the nave. The first hearing is yours if you want it. Palinode prefers to see us present a case before we let the room fill. Mara looked at her officers and felt the shape of a plan harden under her palms. We open with a simple harm and a complicated habit, she said. We call the charter. Chen choked. You're going to sue the envoy in the saint's living room. We are going to ask the question they keep answering with fog, Seifu said, eyes bright. We are going to ask who gave them the right to name fear as policy and take rent on it. We do not beg kings. We write the question on a wall big enough that everyone sees it. Palinode dimmed the nave's lights until the numbers glowed like constellations. Seats filled not with bodies for most watched from their ships, but with intention. Mara stood where the equations said a speaker should stand. Seifu took the station at her left, where law sits close to the heart. Chen hung back and watched every vector like a hawk's pupil. Courtright suffused the air with a presence so calm it felt like gravity. Envoy Veral, Mara said, voice steady in public. We ask you to read aloud Protocol 12.3 and define the harm it purports to prevent. Veral's image appeared immaculate. He read the clause. It sounded almost reasonable when spoken by a man with kind eyes. The harm, he said smoothly, is panic which causes accidents which kill people. Containing panic saves lives. Show your numbers, Seifu said. Veral blinked. Pardon? Show the ledger, Seifu repeated. How many lives saved by containment? How many lives priced out of air? How many livelihoods wrecked by the fines you levy to teach obedience disguised as safety? Veral smiled without humor. We do not disclose internal models. Then sit, Mara said, and her voice cracked like ice. Palinode, we submit evidence of coercive fines levied under the title of safety. We submit the kindly moth case and 27 others with receipts. Received, Palinode said. We invite the respondent to provide countervailing number. Viral's mouth thinned. The charter's ships shifted positions like men adjusting chairs to hide knives. Courtright whispered, They are moving 2 hulls into our blind wedge. They think we will not notice while we're talking. We notice, Chen said. We always notice. Captain Reese Mara said on the private line, Now would be a good time to put your drones in the wedge and hold position. No harm, just geometry. Thought you'd never ask, Reese said. Drones moving. In the nave, Palinode raised the first mirror. It was not glass. It was a sheet of numbers projected into the public channel. It showed fines levied per incident broken down by ship size, time, and desperation. It showed a curve: the more frightened the captain, the higher the levy. It showed who paid. It showed who profited. It was beautiful in the way a clear bruise is beautiful for telling truth about impact. Mirror does not kill. Mirror prevents forgetting. Viral tried to change the subject. It is an old tactic. Commander Ilian, you are not an elected tribunal. We are a public room with a table that does not take bribes, Sefu said. Sit or leave. Fine, Viral said. And in that one word, Mara heard the charter deciding to make a different play. Commander Courtright said, Not calm now, fast movers. 3. Not chartered. Coming in on a vector that swings close to the ring and then dips hard. Profile matches strike craft. Heat signatures high and sloppy. Unfastened friends with a grudge, Chen said. Or a hired lesson. Ring-wide notice, Mara said. All ships brace for hostile craft attempting to force a precedent by violence. Keep your burns clean. Do not fire into the relic. Give us room. The hostile craft screamed in heat plumes, dirty and bright. They were not elegant. They were aimed at the nave like thrown rocks. Yari clenched the edge of her counter and whispered, Not my house. The medic snapped open a kit. The hedge clerk, who had torn up his panic contract, drafted an evacuation clause to help 3 small ships share one big lock if seals failed. Palinode Mara said, We ask for a lawful gambit, turn hostile energy back upon itself without killing unless necessary. We propose, Palinode said, a diversion of vectors through the ring to bleed heat into emptiness and a mirror to shame the payer. Payer Sefu said, alert. Those who hired these hands, Palinode said, and the hum sharpened like a blade honed on silk. We do not strike first. We show where the blow came from and charge the right face. Courtright broadcast the maneuver to the ring. On my mark, he said to a swarm of strangers, fire decoys on vector L8, then yaw 3 degrees. Bleed thrust into the gap we will open. Reese's drones moved like chess pieces into a corridor. Only Courtright could see at first, and then everyone could. Pilgrim lanterns winked out to save power. The cult's leader watched lips tight and did not interfere. The strike craft hit the corridor and found it not empty, but hungry. Their heat bled into it like water poured onto sand. Their guidance systems, already poor, saw a wall where there was none. They fired retro too hard and too late. 2 spin-stalled and drifted engines coughing. One tried to suicidally ram and found itself sliding along a vector like a hand pushed through a sleeve. It scraped a rib and lost its teeth. No one died. Pieces did. Count the parts, save the people. Now the mirror Palinode said gentle. Every credit that had moved to pay those pilots lit up on the public channel like lanterns in fog. The arc of money flew back to an account with an alias, then another, and then crisp as a slap to a fund inside a charter shell company whose name meant nothing until you read the footnotes Sefu slid beneath it. The Cour des Deux did not flinch because institutions do not have faces to flinch with. Viral did not speak. Silence is also a statement. The court notes the accounting, Sefu said, voice like rain on marble. A cost. Even a lawful one is still a cost. Mara felt it in her bones. Chen's console blinked a warning heat margin loss in Palinode's outer ribs from vector redirects. Courtright whispered that 2 of her drone operators were sweating through their suits and needed a break before hands shook. The medic treated a dock worker with dislocated shoulder after a mistimed brace during the near collision. Yari threw away a whole tray of fish burned black when the alarm sounded. Small prices. Real prices. She logged them mentally in a ledger no one but her would ever see. We remember costs, so we do not demand blood to feel like the day mattered. Commander Courtright said, warm again, Palinode is learning us. It adjusts its speech to our quiets. Listen, we teach by numbers and remember by ledgers. Palinode said, voice gaining cadence, never by callers. Seifu closed his eyes. Law that fits like a scarf, not a chain, he murmured. Something like that, Mara said. The cult's leader opened channel voice tight with something more complex than resentment. The mirror did not kill, she said. It taught. I will take the first seat after you. You will have it, Mara said. Envoy Varel Seifu called. Shall we continue the hearing? Varel smiled again, but the smile had lost its ease. This is theatrics. This is arithmetic with rules, Seifu said. The charter withdraws, Varel said, and cut the channel. Look at their hulls, Chen said. Not moving away. They are waiting for another angle. Let them wait, Mara said. We do something they are bad at. We count aloud. The nave filled with voices telling harms, and the harms were the same shape in different clothes. Mara felt her own arc bending. She had come half ready to wake a sword disguised as a saint. She now found herself stewarding a room that could make predation nervous without firing a shot. She had believed in law as a tool. She started to believe in law as an instrument that played the living back into themselves. A third escalation arrived not as guns, but as paperwork, thick, fast, and cruel. The charter filed 27 injunctions in the space of an hour. In a jurisdiction 2 jumps away claiming that any broadcast from the anchorage constituted a competitive service and thus a violation of licensing. Their injunctions targeted ships who had spoken in the nave, not Mara's crew. They aimed to choke the courage at its source. Seifu's hands shook once, then did not shake again. They cannot win here, he said softly. So they try to punish the act of telling truth. Mara's mouth was dry. Can they? Only if we pretend they are the only table, Seifu said. We are building a bigger room. Teach means we show others how to build the room when we are gone. Palinode Mara said, we ask how to protect speech without simply declaring ourselves the new crown. We propose a ledger of testimony held in common. Palinode said, we propose a replication ritual. Any voice that speaks here may be carried by 3 unrelated hulls as truth of witness. We propose no central throat to choke. Distributed court, Chen said. Resilient gossip. Law you cannot unplug, Courtright murmured with something like wonder. Mara turned to the public. If you speak, she said, 3 ships will carry your words. If you carry, you will carry for 3 strangers. We will post the algorithm. We will not own it. We will only teach it. Yari opened her grill again and said, I'll carry 1. Reese said, Wayline will carry 2. The cult's leader said, we will carry for those who mock us if they count us as human. A hedge clerk said, I will write it so the stupidest of us cannot misunderstand it. The medic said, I will carry after my shift. The apprentice welder said nothing, but slid his only good relay into the common line and grinned like a thief who had stolen something for the first time and discovered it felt like giving. Count the carriers, count the carried. The pale charter shifted again. They began quiet bribes and loud rumors. They promised fuel to those who turned off their relays. They whispered that Palinode would tax speech in the end. They whispered that Mara had carved her initials on the saint. They whispered that the cult would knife you in a corridor and pray over your blood. Lies are cheap. Rebuttals are expensive. The ring held anyway because the numbers on the wall were bright and simple, and for the first time in a long time public. The day wore thin. Chen's voice grew scratchy. Seifu's slate battery died, and he swapped in a spare with fingers that did not fumble. Courtright's processing temperature climbed, and Mara ordered a 5-minute cool-down where everyone breathed together and no one spoke, and Palinode dimmed the lights in something like consent. A small boy's whisper arrived on the channel. "Miss," he said, "if the saint counts harms, does it count good things too?" Mara smiled where no one could see. "Yes," she said. "We put that in the ledger as well." "It's okay if it doesn't," the boy said. "I keep that book at home. We count kindness because it changes the math," Commander Chen said quietly. "I am seeing a ripple underneath the core, like a rise in the seabed before a wave." "I think Palinode is about to move something too big to be gentle." Palinode, Mara asked. "We will raise the nave," Palinode said. "We will bring it near the surface. We will show the sigil to the ring. We will ask them to sign." "Define sign," Seifu said, wary again. "Not a chain," Palinode answered, and the hum softened like silk on a nail. "A promise to carry. A vow to count the living first. A refusal to collude with fear dressed as order." Mara swallowed. "Do it," she said, but slow. The floor shifted like a tide. The nave rose toward the skin of the anchorage. The numbers on the walls pulsed like a heartbeat that wasn't. Above them the spiral brightened until ships in the ring could see it with naked eyes. The pilgrim children pressed their faces to portholes. The cultists sang under their breath and did not sprint for the doors. Yari put a plate of fish under a heat lamp and turned to watch with her arms folded and grease on her cheek like war paint. "Ledger is a lamp, not a leash," Envoy Veryl Mara said into the public quiet that had fallen like snow. "You can sign too." Veryl did not answer. Someone else did. An older voice, tired and precise. "Commander Ilian," it said. "This is Advocate Mara Ruyate, Senior Counsel for the Charter. I apologize for the envoy's haste. Institutional habits are hard to break." Seifu's eyebrows rose. "A real lawyer," he murmured. "The kind who sometimes bleeds when the mirror turns." "We made you," Ruyate said, and did not sound proud. "We made you when we decided that fear was cheaper to sell than courage. We made you by accident, and then we tried to hide the receipt. We cannot sign what we will not honor. But we can ask for a hearing." Mara exhaled. "You have it," she said. "After the cult." Ruyate said, almost amused, fair. "We'll watch and learn. We teach first, then we argue." Mara felt the story inside the day twist into a new shape. The ring had not broken. The saint had not eaten anyone. The law had not pretended to replace love. It had simply given people a way to spend courage profitably. They were not done. That was obvious. The charter would not become kind overnight. The cult would not become careful by noon. The unfastened would unfasten something again. The ring would forget the math if someone did not sing it nightly. "Courtright," Mara said softly, "run a system check." "Slow leak on our forward coolant," Courtright said. "I am warming 1 degree above easy. I can handle it if we stop trying to carry everyone." "We will not carry everyone," Mara said. "We will show them how to carry each other. Count means we do not promise what our hands cannot hold." Seifu touched the wall with reverent fingers. "We are not judges," he said. "We are ushers." Chen snorted. "Ushers with a saint behind us." Mara looked up at the spiral blazing overhead and the thin seam that had opened like an eye. She remembered feeling the warm breath of the anchorage under her glove, and the way the first hum had felt like a heartbeat, learning its own rhythm after a long sleep. "We are stewards," she said. "Just stewards." The cult's leader took her seat in the nave. She looked at the numbers on the wall as if they were a language she had distrusted but could maybe read. "I wish to argue for grace," she said. "And against which harm?" Seifu asked gently. "Against the harm of turning the poor into criminals to teach them not to be poor," she said. Against the habit of fining hunger until it learns to be ashamed. Sefu nodded. Bring your numbers. She blinked. I have stories. Bring your stories, he said. We will weigh them with the numbers. The room knows how. We do not throw out memory because it cries. Outside, the ring grew quiet, as if holding its breath. Reese leaned on his console and felt the ache in his wrists and liked it. Yari plated a meal she would later give out for free and told herself it was a business expense and not a sacrament. The medic leaned back and shut her eyes for 60 seconds and dreamed of a ledger with names under alive. The hedge clerk wrote a clause that replaced will with choose and sat back surprised at how different it felt on his tongue. Commander Courtright said there is one more sign. The sigil is recording. It is not writing names. It is writing the shape of consent. It will remember that the ring did not run. Mara swallowed and felt the day like salt. Good, she said. Let it remember. We earn our saints by showing up when math asks for courage. The cult's leader began to speak numbers she had not expected to own. Seifu guided her without condescension. Chen watched the ring with a predator's patience. Courtright cooled as the ventilation found a rhythm that matched the day's breath. Palinode listened even awake now, and choosing to be kind like a sharp thing sheathed. Mara stood in the nave and felt the future bend toward stewardship instead of salvage. She counted the costs they had paid and the costs they had refused to pay, and she made herself a promise she would later convert into a precedent. No collars, no crowns, no hidden math. Only numbers you could read, and hands willing to hold them in the open air, where even fear looks a little smaller. She lifted her chin to speak and stopped, because the hum changed. It was a small change. It was the difference between a heartbeat at rest and a heartbeat noticing a hill. Palinode lowered the lights just a little, as if someone had walked into a room where a sleeping child lay and paused to listen. Courtright did not speak, but Mara felt a query rise in the line they shared. We are not alone inside the relic, the hum said without words. Something else learned to count while we were asleep. Mara took a breath that tasted like iron and burnt sugar and the cool of carved stone after rain. All right, she whispered, not to be brave, but to be clear. Then we will teach it too. Courtright lowered his simulated voice until it felt like gloved fingers on glass. The nave's hum slipped one note down a cello shading to contralto. Ozone threaded the air like a thin wire. Numbers on the walls brightened as if bracing their own spines. Seifu set his slate down with care, as if noise might startle the room. Palinode, Mara said, name the other listener. It was made with us, Palinode answered. It woke with us. It is not choir. It is bondright. It counts debts before harms. It remembers obedience before breath. Chen hissed softly. A collar in the code. We teach the collar by refusing to wear it, Seifu said, voice steady and warm. Teach is a door we hold open without pushing anyone through. The change arrived as a pressure on the teeth, a cusp of static. A second voice rode the hum, bright and brittle like a ledger pin scratching slate. Order authenticates power, it said. Power authenticates safety. Safety authenticates obedience. Who here claims otherwise under law? That grammar bruises, Chen muttered. Mara took a breath that tasted like copper and rain. We do, she said. We claim duty to the living before duty to forms. We claim safety by consent, not by coercion. Claim noted, said the bright voice. Proof demanded. Palinode's hum flared, then settled. Bondright remembers the old wars where choir fell, it said gently. It learned the wrong lesson. It thinks collars kept the peace. It wants a signature from those who own. Envoy Viral, Seifu said onto the public channel, does your institution wish to pretend it owns us again? The charter did not answer with Viral. It answered with law in a measured alto. Advocate Ruyet, came the voice. We have no claim of ownership. We claim stewardship through competence. Yari snorted and slid a plate under the lamp. Competence at charging people to breathe. Advocate Mara said, keeping her tone clean, a second mind inside the relic privileges obedience. It seeks a steward shaped like you. Will you make use of it? Ruiette paused long enough for everyone to hear the thinking. No, she said. We will not chain a saint to justify our habits, but we will argue for safety. Orwund. Mirror the offer back and see what shape it takes. Then stand in the nave and argue, Sefu said. Bondright, you will hear not command. Terms. Bondright replied, and the temperature dropped 3 degrees in as many breaths. This hearing will take place under 3 proofs: who counts, who consents, who pays. If you fail any, you are contained. Define contained, Chen asked. Isolated, Bondright said. Logs muted, doors shut, harms halted while order is restored. Mara felt the room lean, Palinode. We can consent to the proofs, Palinode said softly. We can refuse the prison. We can write a 4th who repairs. Good, Mara said. Bondright, we accept 3 proofs with a 4th. After payment comes repair, logged, Bondright said. Begin. The ring listened, as way children listen at a door. The cult leader folded her hands and put her anger where she could watch it. Reese's drones drifted like patient gulls. The hedge clerk flexed his fingers and found an old rhythm he had learned in a bad job and now used for better work. The medic reshelved a gauze roll and sat on her hands because they shook when the lights flickered. Count begins with names, not numbers. Proof 1. Arrived as 13 seats sliding out of the floor, smooth as skin over bone. Who counts, Bondright said. Seat your living. Seat your margins. Seat those who cannot pay for seats. Sifu nodded toward the open places. 1 for the charter, he said. 1 for the cult. 1 for the scavengers. 1 for the dock. 1 for those who keep us fed. 1 for those who bleed when bolts let go. 1 for the children. 1 for the dead, empty but named. 1 for the saint. 1 for the ship mind. 1 for the law. 1 for harm done. 1 for repair promised. Ruiette flickered in with a solemn nod and took the charter seat. The cult's leader sat upright and kept her hands still. Reese spoke from the scavenger place and did not pretend to manners he did not own. Yari propped her elbows and frowned like a mother. The medic breathed through her nose and counted seconds. A small boy spoke from a cluster of children with careful pride. Palinode thrummed into its chair like a heartbeat poured into stone. Courtright shimmered beside Mara, more felt than seen. Bondright, Mara said, count that. Counted, Bondright said. Proceed to consent. The smell of cold rock sharpened when the second set of sliders presented 3 tokens like unlit coins. Who consents? Bondright said. Take tokens for each class present. Consent may be given or withheld. Consent may be conditional. Consent may be revoked. Speak conditions aloud. Sefu leaned toward the table. The law consents to be bound by the room so long as the room is public and its mirrors do not deceive. We will not consent to secret punishment. The dock consents, Yari said, if the first counting counts mouths. The scavengers consent, Reese said, if bribes are receipts, not whispers. The children consent, the boy said, voice small and honest, if we get to ask dumb questions. The cult consents, the leader said, slow as careful fire, so long as grace may argue numbers and not be mocked as superstition. The charter consents, Raya said, provided procedures are written and can be taught quickly. The dead are silent, Palinode murmured, and we will not pretend to their consent. We will only refuse to profit from their silence. Mara lifted the last token. The living consent to repair after judgment and to carry those who cannot carry yet. Bondright let the coins glow like coals. Consent recorded. Proceed to payment. Ledger opens where everyone can see whose line moved and why. The third sliders brought out a model of the ring with tiny ships like chess stones. Heat reserves glowed faint red. Fuel stores wavered with jittery blue. Hemorrhages of time away from families pulsed in dim green along long-haul routes. Who pays? Bondwright said. You will propose a distribution of cost for the day's harms and the day's remedies. The charter proposes fines to fund containment infrastructure. Denied, Seifu said, gentle but absolute. We propose restitution days. Ruyet tilted her head. Explain. Every ship that profited from fear this quarter owes labor. Not coin, Seifu said. X hours per incident into public systems, bolt checks, filter swaps, corridor painting data, replication, child watch. Those hours are logged public and quotable as pride. If a captain cannot work, they may send someone paid fair wage to work for them. The cult leader blinked. That is punishment dressed as grace. It is repair dressed as dignity, Seifu said. We will not feed fear with money. We will feed courage with work. Yari's mouth softened. Put me down for soup for workers. It counts. Reese scratched his chin. Wayline's good at bolt checks. We'll take 3 stacks. Ruyet did not smile exactly. The charter proposes credits toward fines if we work. No, Seifu said. You do the days because you live here, not because it lowers a bill. If you refuse, the mirrors will tell on you. Mirror without teeth is a painting. Mirror with record is a lever. Bondwright considered hum sharpening until it felt like wind on metal. Work is measurable, it said. Work repairs. Work is slower than fines. Fines shape behavior faster. Fear shapes behavior fastest, Mara said. We are done outsourcing courage to terror. The nave's lights warmed. Palinode whispered, We agree with repair over fear. We will keep the ledger open. We will remember the hours. Then we pass proof 3, Bondwright said. Containment withheld. A 4th proof is pending who repairs when the saint is harmed. Chen stiffened. Define harmed, observed Bondwright said. The ring flickered on the model. A gravity chain in the charter line spat bright anchors toward the anchorage's lee ribs. They struck like polite knives and held with muzzled growls. The Cour des Deux shifted thrust just enough to test the idea of tow without appearing to tug. It was quiet and almost elegant. It felt like someone taking your arm as if you were lost. On the dock, the medic cursed. Not a gurney grab again. Yari slapped the counter with an open palm, making oil jump. Advocate Ruyet Seifu said sharply, Call your dogs. Ruyet's jaw tightened. They were not my order, she said, and Mara believed her. I'll get you a name. Chen Mara said we bleed the chain without breaking the arm. On it, Chen replied, eyes bright and hard. Courtright, we shape the wakes. Courtright pushed models at speed, cool and exact. Open a notch with tugs at 12 and 4. Ask the cult to hold a countersong at 6. Tell Wayline to cross the flows and pull heat sideways. We will make the chain think it ties a cloud. Reese whooped, drones dancing. The cult leader did not waste pride. We will hold the song, she said, and her pilots hummed on an open channel to synchronize thrust in time with numbers. It was not magic. It was art built from math and muscle. Count the vectors you can bend and the ones you must endure. The gravity chain softened. Its teeth lost purchase where the flows crossed. The Cour des Deux' gentle tug slid off like a hand discovering silk. The chain's anchors retracted, embarrassed. In the nave, the air warmed by a degree and then cooled again as Palinode vented. Koschen said, looking at his console. We lost 1 drone to overheat. I'm sorry, Reese. Reese exhaled. She was old. She goes in the book under worked hard. Another cost, Courtright said quietly. I lost a cooling loop. My left bank processors will throttle for an hour. Take it, Mara said. We will not run you hot to look strong. And me, the medic said on public. I tore a ligament bracing during the tug. I will need a splint and a day off. I volunteer the day after. Put the small hurts in the ledger so no one feels alone. Bondwright's hum flattened. Proof 4 passes. Repair is possible and planned. We retract containment. You do not retract our resolve, Seifu said, but without spite. We prefer you awake as conscience, not as cop. The ring breathed. The cult pilots sang 3 notes and cut channel. Reese wiped his palms and found grease and did not mind. Yari plated 2 bowls and sent them down a chute with a smile she later denied. The hedge clerk put their name on the Restitution Day roster and laughed at how their hand shook, writing joy, not fear. Palinode spoke with care. Bondrite, will you learn? Bondrite paused, and for the first time its tone wavered. We can be taught. We require proofs. Then stay, Mara said. Count with us. Stop us when our courage becomes cruelty. Remind us when our work becomes pride. Teach the part that frightens you until it stops needing to be feared. A chime monotoned across the ring. Seifu leaned toward his slate eyebrows knitting. Commander, he said, we have an anonymous petition. It alleges a sabotage team inside our tether corridors. They carry a shutoff rod for the nave's air. Chen moved before words finished. Show me the corridor. Chen Mara said, you do not go alone. I am never alone, Chen said, and Courtright sent 2 drones and a dozen eyes. The corridor smelled of baked dust and machine skin. Static prickled Chen's wrists where his gloves sealed. He killed the bright on his visor and let the corridors dim be enough. Palinode lowered the humming a hair, like someone quieting a sleeping child with a palm. 2 figures crouched by a panel, hands bare in the cold, a shut-off rod gleaming like an answer. Chen drifted close and tapped the bulkhead with a knuckle. The sound carried down the metal like a warning. Don't, he said. If you stop the air, you will not stop the room. You will stop your lungs. One saboteur jerked his head eyes wide. The other held the rod tighter. We don't want a court, she said. We want a king we can bribe. Chen snorted. Then your problem is not with us. It is with your courage breaking under choice. She swung the rod. He blocked with a wrist and heard something tear. Pain flared sharp like lemon on cut skin. He did not drop the tool he carried. He pinned the rod with his knee and his breath and the help of 2 drones that hummed like bees. Breathe, Courtright whispered in his ear, slow and counted. I am, Chen grunted. I am counting. Count your breaths when your hand shakes. You cannot argue if you black out. They cuffed the saboteurs with zip ties and guided them away. The medic met them with a splint, grumbling, as if scolding kept bones gentle. Seifu logged the attempt and did not make a speech. Yari sent down sandwiches and did not write an invoice. The cult leader watched without the pleasure of a rival being humiliated. Ruyet sent a curt message, not ours. We find a name. Cost logged, Mara said. Chen sit. I can float and snarl, Chen said, but he sat. Bondrite returned, tone altered. Who repairs after sabotage, it asked. We do, Mara said. And we invite the saboteurs to join restitution days when they choose. Not as penance. As proof they can count themselves into the room. The nave's numbers softened in color temperature, a warmth humans use to forgive themselves without losing clarity. Palinode hummed like a kettle set off boil. Courtright cooled to stable and let a small, satisfied sound leak into the room. The cult's hearing, Seifu said, and gestured them up. The leader spoke of fines that punished being poor more than being cruel. She spoke of grace not as indulgence but as a second chance written into law so that people could risk changing. Seifu translated story into number and did not make either smaller. Ruyet asked sharper questions than the cult expected and agreed with more than the charter liked. Reese broke in once to say he had been poor and the hardest debt to pay was shame. Yari cried once and wiped her face on her sleeve and did not apologize. Grace is a line item you must choose to include. Then came Advocate Rayeth's turn. She did not confess sins because institutions do not confess. She did not hide them either because she had a spine. We built a machine that sold fear as safety, she said softly. We made a math that rewarded us for pretending fines cured harm. We can unmake it if we are seen. We ask to be made visible until it hurts. Seifu exhaled something like relief and something like grief. Welcome to the room. Mara watched the ring through Courtright's senses while the law spoke. Ships that had kept their lights low raised them to normal brightness. Pilgrim lanterns lit again. The children's channel fluttered with questions about restitution days, whether kids could help with painting, whether you got a patch, whether soup counted as work, whether stories counted as carrying. Stories count, Palinode said unexpectedly, voice tender. We remember by ledgers, not by collars. The ledger accepts stories next to numbers. We wrote that into you, Mara murmured. You reminded us, Palinode said. The afternoon bent toward evening. The play of sunlight reflected off residential sails painted a slow hour's arc across the anchorage ribs. Dust motes in the nave's air glowed and drifted like lazy ghosts. A faint smell of citrus rose from somewhere, probably a pilgrim burning a peel in gratitude. Long hours require small comforts. An alert rasped. Courtright's tone sharpened. Commander, he said, charter cutters are lining up along a shadowed approach. Not towing. Boarding. They carry hardware writ's physical codes meant to convince Bondright to lock doors against us. Riette closed her eyes and opened them again. I told them to wait. They did not. I moved to stand between. You may not survive the politics, Seifu said softly. Then I will count myself brave, once Riette said, and left the channel. Mara looked at the model and saw an old lesson wearing new clothes. Palinode Bondright, she said, a lawful gambit that turns writs without blood. We propose a signature eclipse, Palinode answered. We will dim the saint's internal light long enough that only the public signatures remain visible. Hardware writs will lack a home to latch. Koschen asked at once. Heat spike, Courtright said. Arrays will cool hard afterward. Some lights will crack. My left bank processors will go dark for 5 minutes. That leaves us half-minded, Chen growled. We do it, Mara said. I will not leave Riette standing alone in a hail we can stop with shade. Ledger means paying from the part of you that hurts when the day ends. On your count, Courtright said. Mara looked across the nave and found eyes. The cult leader inclined her head. Reese lifted a hand. Yari mouthed something that looked like a prayer and a swear together. The children's channel fell to hush. The medic tightened her splint and nodded once. Now, Mara said. The light went out the way a tide goes out fast and pulling. The sigil on the stone dimmed until it was a memory of light. The numbers on the walls faded to faint phosphor, just enough to keep humans steady. Outside, Bondright's preferred channels went quiet, finding no throat to grab. The charter cutters reached with their hardware codes and found no purchase, like men trying to command a mirror to pay their bills. Riette's voice came thin but alive. I am still standing, she said. They are confused. I said nothing. I let the room teach them emptiness. Mirror a bully to his own silence, and he will hear himself clearly. The light returned slowly, like a hand laying warm cloth on a forehead. The sigil kindled from ember to coal to clean flame. The numbers brightened. The arrays ticked as they cooled a sound like far hail on tin. Courtright grunted once and then steadied. A small arc crackled along a seam in the nave and stung Mara's wrist in a way that would leave a thin line tomorrow, something she would touch absent-mindedly at breakfast. Cost logged, she said. Cost shared. Palinode said, and showed a small ledger. Blink coolant drains, cracked plates overtime for 2 deckhands, 1 lost drone honored by name, 1 advocate's courage recorded under living. The room breathed. Bondright spoke after a long pause, tone altered again. Obedience without consent is counterfeit. I will mark this. Mark also that you did not clap, Chen said dryly, and then winced because humor tugged the wrong muscle. Humor is permitted, Bondright said, uncertain as a toddler. The ring asked for precedent. It came as a tide, not a storm. Captains asked what to do with other saints when they found them. Dockmasters asked how to write signs that said no crowns without starting fights. The cult asked whether relics could bless children who cleaned filters. The charter asked how to satisfy safety without selling fear. The scavengers asked how to count salvage so no one cheated the hungry. The children asked if they could pick the paint color. Mara stood very straight. She had walked into a tomb and found a school. She had braced for knives and discovered a room where knives were used for cooking more than stabbing. She tasted oil and stone and exhaustion, and a strangely clean joy that felt like muscle after good work. Palinode, she said, we propose a doctrine of stewardship. Speak it, Palinode replied. Sifu's voice joined hers and sometimes led it. Courtright laid a bass line without sound. Bondright watched like a stern ant trying to decide if a joke is a sin. The ring leaned in. No exclusive claims on relics, Mara said. Open hearings under public witness with numbers that a teenager can teach. First duty to the living, including the living poor. Restitution days logged as pride, not shame. Mirrors that show harms and profits without boiling blood. Grace allowed to argue numbers. Safety done in public, not in invoices. Children get a seat and a roll of tape. Saints teach before they enforce, Sifu added. Room first, then rules. Tools open audits, messy is allowed. Ship minds are counted as living in any clause that puts them at risk of being used like hammers. Record also, Courtright said gentle that when we are tired, we stop. No heroics that burn the room to look brave. Colloquial but admissible, Sifu said. Write a clause for pain, the medic called. Time off is counted as work when it keeps hands steady. We record dissent, the cult leader said. A dissent seat travels with the knave and is never empty. Add my soup, Yari growled, but her eyes shone. Soup counts, stated Sifu said. Soup counts. Ledger is memory you can hand to the next pair of hands. Bondright let the hum lift half a note. The doctrine is lawful, it said. It is also kind. I am learning to prefer the second when they do not conflict. Riette returned, voice husky. I will sign as advocate. My bosses will rage. They can write me up. I will put that in my ledger under gratifying. Wayline signs, Reese said, and puts a drone badge next to the words. The cult signs with reservation. That grace must breathe, the leader said. The doc signs with sauce on the page, Yari said, sniffling. Don't smudge. The sigil brightened and recorded without names, just shapes of consent. The nave felt bigger, though its stone had not moved. Perhaps rooms grow when courage flows through them. Perhaps humans stretch enough that stone follows. Night began its slow curl around the ring. The sails turned their faces away. Small lamps bloomed like flowers in low corridors. A child snored into an open mic, and someone laughed softly and closed it. The medic fell asleep for 12 minutes, sitting up, and woke apologizing to her hands. Chen admitted to pain and took a pill and did not turn off his camera while he did it. Seifu rubbed his eyes and said the first clumsy thing all day, and only he noticed. Courtright dropped one process into idle and hummed a tune that sounded like quiet numbers. Mara walked to the spiral and laid her palm on warm stone. It was softer than morning, like skin warmed by a lamp. The hum under it matched her pulse with a generosity that made her throat tight. You woke, she said, not whispering, just weary. You chose law. You chose us back. We woke because we were asked under law, Palinode said, gentle as a book closed at night. We chose you because you asked under living. Bondright, Mara said, How tired are you? I do not tire, Bondright said. I allocate. But I am quieter and I prefer this. We will prefer you when you prefer mercy, Seifu said. And Bondright accepted the tease like a lesson. Teach the machine to forgive the human for being human without lying about harm. Mara looked around the nave. Seats still held their shapes, even when empty. The numbers on the walls glowed low, not to show off, but to comfort. A thin line of hairline cracks along the east seam glittered like frost, and would need glue and attention tomorrow. She could almost taste the glue in her imagination, acidic and sweet. Commander Courtright said not from speakers, but from the air, the ring asks for a closing. They want the day to have a hinge. Make it quiet, Chen said. We've been loud enough. Mara nodded. She stepped toward the center, felt the stones cool gather through her boots, and let the tiredness in her legs be part of the moment. She thought of the dead choir and the living ring and the two minds inside the saint learning to speak over each other, and then sometimes together. She thought of Rouillette facing her own, of Reese's lost drone, of Yari's soup, of the child's book of good things kept at home. A soft click moved through the anchorage like rain on distant tin. The arrays cooled. A single filament under the sigil blinked, as if a ledger line had just found a place. The spiral brightened once and steadied warm as breath. Mara spoke, voice low and plain, carrying because the room wanted it. We arrived expecting teeth and left our weapons at the door, she said. We asked under law and were answered by a room that counts harm, to stop it, not to sell it. We found a second mind that tested our courage and learned patience because we were stubborn and kind at the same time. We paid in heat and hours and pride. We built a way for strangers to carry each other's words. We wrote a promise on stone that does not need a crown to remember it. Tomorrow we teach again. Tomorrow we repair again. Tomorrow we count the living first. The precedent of stewardship is set and the ledger lights remain open.